The first night in my new house, I woke up because someone was gently brushing my hair behind my head. Except I was sleeping against the wall. I jerked upright so fast my neck cracked. For a second, in the fog of half-sleep, I thought I had imagined it. A leftover sensation from a dream. But then something brushed my hair again, slow, deliberate. A soft sweeping motion that moved upward from the base of my skull toward the crown from the wall's side. The side no one should have been on. My whole scalp tightened. Every nerve lit up like it had been plugged into an electrical outlet. I froze. The brushing stopped. But the feeling of being touched didn't fade. It lingered, like the echo of a hand that was still hovering inches from my head, waiting for me to move again. I didn't want to turn. I didn't want to look at the wall. I didn't want to confirm that the one place I'd always believed was safe, my own bed, was already invaded. But the silence stretched so thin it felt like something was pressing against it, breathing against it, waiting for me to acknowledge it. I slowly lifted my hand to the back of my head, expecting maybe a spider, maybe a stray thread from the pillowcase, anything that made sense. My fingers brushed something that was definitely not hair. It was damp, warm, and when I touched it, it pulled away fast. I shoved myself off the bed, tripping over the blanket, slamming into the dresser hard enough to knock things off the top. My lamp toppled and crashed to the floor. Pepper, my cat, hissed and bolted out of the room as if something had lunged at her. My breath punched out of me in uneven gasps. The whole room felt wrong, tilted, distorted, like the air pressure had dropped suddenly. The wall where my head had been resting looked normal at first. Flat, beige, ordinary. Then I saw it. A faint handprint. Right where my head had been. Not smeared like dirt or grease. Impressed like someone had pressed their palm into the paint from the other side. The fingers were long. Much longer than mine. Too long to be human. They stretched upward, warped, uneven, like something had been dragging its hand down the inside of the wall until it reached the spot behind my pillow. I swallowed hard, but my throat clicked like it was sticking shut. Then, I kid you not, the wall breathed. A subtle inward flex, barely noticeable unless you were staring directly at it. The kind of movement no solid structure should make. The paint tightened like there was pressure behind it. Then the whisper came. So close it vibrated through the drywall. "So you're awake now." My knees buckled. I backed toward the doorway, eyes locked on the wall. It whispered again, slow like it was savoring every syllable. "Don't leave." Those two words hit me harder than the handprint, harder than the breathing, harder than the brushing. Because they weren't threatening. They were begging. Like whatever was inside the wall had been waiting a long time. Like it had been lonely. Like it wasn't asking me not to leave the room. But not to leave it. I ran. I didn't look back. But even as I fled, I could hear it. Soft tapping from inside the wall, following my footsteps, matching my pace. Tap, tap, tap. As if it was walking behind me, hidden inches away. As if it already knew I'd come back. Before anything strange happened, my life felt like it was finally settling into something stable, predictable, even. I'm 28. A remote tech support rep who spends most days fixing other people's problems through a headset, while wearing pajama pants. Not glamorous, but it paid well enough for me to start over somewhere quiet. That's how I ended up in a small, sleepy Oregon town called Pinefield. It's one of those places where the loudest noise after 8 p.m. is a dog barking 3 houses down, and you can hear your own footsteps on the pavement. After years of living in cramped apartments with thin walls and even thinner patience, the silence felt like a luxury. I bought the house on a Thursday. Nothing fancy, just a single-story place with a slanted porch roof, an old oak tree out front, and shutters that rattled in the wind. The kind of home your grandmother would describe as cozy, even though the paint desperately needed updating. Still, it felt like mine. It felt earned. By the time Saturday rolled around, the moving truck had left, and I was surrounded by piles of boxes labeled things like kitchen, bedroom, and the ambiguous misc. Don't lose. The day itself was peaceful, one of those early autumn afternoons where you can smell wood smoke from someone's fireplace even though it's not that cold yet. A soft breeze came through the open windows. Light filtered through the trees in long warm stripes. It was calm in a way that made me breathe deeper without realizing it. Around 5 p.m., I was kneeling on the living room floor, setting up my Wi-Fi router and talking to Pepper, my cat, like she was a roommate. New place, Pep. No more stomping neighbors. No more midnight karaoke. Just us. She meowed like she agreed, or like she was already bored with me. Eventually I heated up leftover pasta, ate straight from the container, and wandered room to room imagining where everything would go. The couch against the long wall, the TV across from it, maybe a bookshelf near the window. The house creaked occasionally, soft settling noises that older homes make. Harmless stuff. Comforting even. A sign that the house was alive in the familiar, normal way. By 8 p.m., the sky outside had turned that pastel blue that lasts only a few minutes right before night. Porch lights from neighboring homes glowed in warm little halos. Someone down the street was grilling, and the smell drifted faintly through the air. A kid was riding a bike over pavement cracks, laughing. The world was soft, uneventful, harmless. Inside, I lit a single lamp in the living room and let it glow while I scrolled on my phone. My thoughts were simple. I hope the water pressure's good. I should buy real curtains. Maybe I'll finally try cooking real meals here. Nothing heavy. Nothing emotional. Just ordinary everyday brain noise. My mood was steady, content in that quiet way that sneaks up on you when life slows down. By 10:15 p.m. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and told Pepper good night. She curled into a loaf at the foot of the bed, already half asleep. The room was warm. The sheets were soft. I remember thinking how nice it felt to actually be tired at the right time for once. Midnight came and went without me noticing. The house around me rested as peacefully as I did. Each wall, each corner quiet and still. Absolutely nothing suggested that anything was watching. Nothing hinted that the silence wasn't natural. If anything, everything felt perfectly normal. Beautifully normal. And the scariest part is that I believed it. The first 2 days were completely uneventful. If anything, the house felt so peaceful that I wondered why anyone would ever move away from a place like this. But by the third night, little things started happening. Small enough to brush off, strange enough that they lodged themselves in the back of my mind like splinters I couldn't pull out. It started with a sound. A gentle clicking. Not loud. Not even particularly alarming. Just a faint rhythmic tapping somewhere in the hallway, spaced out like someone walking slowly with hard-soled shoes. Click, 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 pause. Click, click. I remember muting the TV, expecting to hear Pepper chasing her toy or batting at something. But she was curled up on the back of the couch, ears pointed sharply toward the hallway like she'd been listening longer than I had. The clicking stopped the moment I stood up. I waited another minute. Nothing. I shrugged it off as the house settling, old wood, old pipes, old everything. But later when I got up to make tea, the clicking started again. This time behind me. Not in the hallway. Near the kitchen door. Pepper jumped off the couch and ran into the bedroom as if something had startled her. I followed her, mostly to feel less stupid for being uneasy. But when I walked into the bedroom, the air felt colder. Not cold enough to see my breath, but cold enough that the hairs on my arms stood up. I checked the window. Closed. Checked the vent. Warm air blowing just fine. Still, the cold lingered. Then came the shadows. Not dramatic ones, no silhouettes or figures or anything that could make me scream. Just movement in the corner of my eye. The kind where you look quickly and find nothing there. A shift in the dark part of the hallway. A flicker near the bathroom door. Soft, darting motions that disappeared the second I turned my head. Every time, I told myself it was my imagination adjusting to the dim lighting. That the house was old. That houses breathe. But the more it happened, the more it felt deliberate. Not like random flickers, but like something ducking out of sight the moment I looked. By the fourth evening, even the sound of the house had changed. The quiet felt heavier, denser. Like the air was thicker somehow. Everything felt a little slower. A little muted. As if the house was waiting for me to stop moving so it could start. When I walked down the hallway, I could swear I heard a faint shift behind me. A soft slide of weight, like someone stepping just after I did. When I paused, the sound paused. When I resumed walking, it resumed. I kept telling myself it was nothing, but my body didn't buy it. My shoulders stayed tense. I started checking behind me without meaning to. Sometimes, when I sat in the living room scrolling on my phone, I'd suddenly feel the urge to look toward the hallway, like something stood just out of sight. And then there was the strange thing with the lights. Only in the bedroom. Only at night. Only when I was alone. The lamp would flicker. Not enough to go out, just enough that the brightness dipped by a fraction of a second. A soft pulse. A tiny heartbeat. Once, then fine. Then 20 minutes later again. And always when I was looking away. One night, when it flickered for the third time, I slowly lifted my eyes toward the mirror across from the bed. In the reflection, the corner of the room behind me looked darker than it should have. Not shadow dark. Depth dark. Like a doorway that had been cracked open into somewhere much deeper than the dimensions of my bedroom. But when I turned around, the corner was perfectly normal. I wanted to laugh it off. I wanted to go to bed without thinking about any of it. But Pepper refused to sleep in the bedroom that night. She sat in the hallway, staring at the slightly open door, her tail twitching in slow, tight motions. She wouldn't look away from the room. It was like she saw something I didn't, or something that didn't want to be seen yet. And that was the first night I locked the bedroom door. Not because I thought I was in danger, just because something felt wrong. By the fifth night, the unease had grown into something heavier, thicker. The kind of atmosphere you can't wave away with logic or blame on old pipes. The house felt aware. Every step I took echoed too loudly. Every breath felt borrowed. Even Pepper had stopped exploring. She kept low to the ground, tail puffed, eyes darting to corners like something was following her from room to room. Still, I tried to sleep in the bedroom again. I told myself I was being dramatic. That nothing had actually happened. No voices. No doors slamming. No figures in the hallway. Just weird noises and cold air and shadows that might have been my imagination. I climbed into bed, pulled the covers up and set my phone on the nightstand. Midnight passed quietly. No flickering lights. No tapping in the hallway. For the first time in a while, I actually began to relax. Then at 2:11 a.m. something changed. The entire house went still. Not quiet still. Like the moment before an earthquake, when the air goes stiff and the world seems to brace for impact. A pressure rolled through the room so heavy my ears popped. Pepper woke instantly, her head snapping up, pupils blown wide. I sat upright. The lamp dimmed. Not flickered but dimmed like someone turned the dial down slowly. Then came the sound. A long slow exhale from inside the bedroom wall. Not the pipes. Not the wind. A breath. Human in shape. But wrong in tone. Wet, rattled, trembling like it came from lungs that didn't fully work. Pepper hissed, loud and violent, and bolted from the room. The second she did, something inside the wall answered her, dragging in a wheezing inhale, as if Pepper's reaction delighted it. I backed up against the headboard, shaking so hard the mattress vibrated. Another breath. This time lower. Closer. Right behind me. The drywall flexed. Just slightly. Just enough to betray movement behind it. I stared, unable to blink. The wall pushed inward, like something was leaning against it from inside. Then slowly 5 long, uneven indentations appeared, stretching downward in crooked lines. Finger marks. Pressing from behind the plaster like soft clay. I choked on my own breath, scrambling sideways across the bed. The fingers dragged downward. Long trembling strokes. As if whatever was inside was trying to feel its way out. Then it spoke. Not a whisper. Not a voice in my head. A low scraping murmur that came from inside the wall, so close I felt the vibration through the floor. Don't go. My vision blurred. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The air got colder, so cold that frost formed along the corner of the wall where the fingers sank deepest. And then the wall split. Not wide. Not enough to reveal anything fully. Just enough for a single gray jointless fingertip to slip through. A slick, ridged surface that pulsed like something alive. It curled downward, tasting the air. That broke me. I lunged off the bed and ran toward the hallway, but the moment I reached the doorway, the entire house responded. A thundering impact struck the wall from inside, shaking the whole frame. A second hit followed. Then a third. Fast. Violent. Growing closer to the break in the plaster. The house wasn't settling. It wasn't creaking. It was trying to let something out. I sprinted into the hallway, heart hammering so violently I thought I might faint. Behind me, a wet tearing sound came from the bedroom as the opening in the drywall widened. Whatever had been hiding, watching, waiting. It wasn't hiding anymore. It was coming, and it already knew exactly where I was. I don't remember deciding to run. I was already sprinting. Pure instinct. Pure terror. My feet hit the hallway floor so fast the wood slats creaked under each step. Behind me, the bedroom wall split open with a wet, tearing crack, followed by a thud. Something heavy dropping out of the wall and onto the floor. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran. The hallway stretched out longer than it ever had before, the shadows bending with my movement, the air thick and cold like I was pushing through water. The lights flickered violently overhead. On, off, on, off. Each flash revealing the walls subtly bulging, shifting, ballooning inward as if unseen hands were pushing against them from every direction. A dragging sound followed me. No many dragging sounds. Wet hands. Long limbs. Fingertips scraping the walls, the ceiling, the floorboards. They were out of the wall. More than one. And they were moving fast. I reached the living room just as the lamp blew out with a sharp pop, plunging everything into darkness. I stumbled, caught myself on the couch, and heard the first impact. Thud! Something slammed into the hallway wall hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Then again. Thud, getting closer. I bolted toward the kitchen. My breath came in short, tearing gasps. My chest burned. My legs felt like they were made of electricity. Shaking but flying forward. The dragging turned into footsteps. Fast footsteps. Too fast to be human. I cut through the kitchen and grabbed the back door handle, yanked. Locked. My fingers shook so badly I couldn't turn the deadbolt. I fumbled, slipped, tried again, tears of panic blurring my vision. I could hear them entering the kitchen, soft slaps of bare feet. More than one. Breathing wet and uneven like lungs filled with thick fluid. My shaking hand finally twisted the lock, but something grabbed the other side of the door. Not a human grip. Not fingers. Palm. Large. Flat. Pressing hard, holding the door closed. The wood bowed inward, groaning under the pressure. My blood turned to ice. I let go and stumbled backward, knocking into the table. A low, almost curious exhale came from the other side of the door. It knew I was trapped. The creatures behind me shuffled closer, steps echoing like a swarm. No time. No plan. I spun and sprinted toward the garage door, the narrow one near the pantry. I slammed my shoulder into it, burst through, and grabbed the chain of the old manual garage door opener. The metal mechanism screeched awake, rattling as the door lifted inch by excruciating inch. Behind me, footsteps. Fast. Racing. Closing in. I crouched and shoved myself under the door when it was only half open, scraping my back against the metal. Something brushed my ankle. Something cold and slick and too long-fingered. I kicked blindly and scrambled onto the driveway, gravel cutting into my knees. A hand, gray, boneless-looking, slid under the rising garage door, reaching for me. Its fingers stretched, joints bending wrong, tips dragging along the concrete like it was memorizing my shape. I stumbled to my feet and ran. Barefoot. Panicked. Almost blind in the darkness. Rain hammered my face. The street was empty. Silent. But behind me, the garage door shook violently. Something slamming into it over and over, making the old metal buck outward. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I sprinted down the street, lungs burning, legs failing, heart punching so hard I thought it would burst. Every few steps, I swore I heard something behind me. Wet pattering, frantic tapping, breath that didn't belong to anything human. Only when I reached the far intersection, half a mile away, did I collapse onto the curb, gasping, trembling, tasting blood in my mouth. The night was still. The street was empty. But I could feel it, deep in my bones, that whatever had come out of the walls had seen me, had touched me, had followed me right to the edge of escape. And it wasn't done. The police arrived just after sunrise. By then I'd been sitting on the curb for almost 2 hours, soaked through, shivering so hard my teeth ached. My voice barely worked when I tried to explain what happened. The officers exchanged looks in that very specific way cops do when they're trying to decide if someone is unstable or just terrified. They checked the house. Closets. Attic. Basement crawl space. Walls. And like every horror story that should end neatly but never does, they found nothing. No break in the drywall. No cracks. No handprints. No evidence of anything being inside the walls at all. Not even dust disturbed. It was like whatever came out had erased itself perfectly. One officer actually laughed under his breath and told me old houses make weird noises. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. Pepper was still hiding under the neighbor's porch, tail puffed, refusing to come out until I physically picked her up. When the cops finally left, I gathered what I could: clothes, my laptop, the box of important documents I always kept near the door. Everything else stayed behind. I didn't even walk back into the bedroom, just looked down the hallway at the closed door and felt my stomach twist like it was warning me. I checked into a motel 2 towns away. A cheap one, but brightly lit, open ceilings, nothing touching the walls except the nightstand. I showered for nearly an hour, trying to wash off the feeling of being touched by something that shouldn't exist. Warm water helped. For a while it almost felt like I could forget. The next morning, I called a contractor to inspect the house. I didn't tell him what really happened, just said I heard structural noises in the bedroom wall. He said he'd check it out and call me back. He didn't call that day, or the next. On the 3rd day I called him again. The receptionist sounded tense when she answered. "Are you the one who owns the Pinefield property?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Did the inspector find something?" A long pause. "He left the site early. He said he wasn't comfortable being there alone." My skin crawled. "Why?" Another pause, shorter this time. "He felt movement in the wall. He thought it was rodents, but he said the pattern didn't make sense. And he refused to go back inside." I thanked her, hung up, and sat on the motel bed for a long time. Pepper paced the room, restless, pausing often to stare at the wall next to the TV. That afternoon I drove back to the house, not to stay, just to look from the outside. The porch light was on even though I'd never turned it on. One of the curtains in the living room was moved, like someone had pulled it aside. I didn't go in, didn't touch the door, didn't even go up the steps. I stood at the end of the walkway, heart hammering, watching the house as if it might blink. And then something happened. Inside, deep, muffled by distance and drywall, I heard tapping. Soft, slow, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. Exactly the pattern I heard the night everything started. I backed up to my car without taking my eyes off the windows. Every instinct screamed to leave, to get as far away as possible. So I did. I got in the car, slammed the door, and drove until the house was a memory in the rearview mirror. I moved 3 states away within a month. Life is quieter now, calmer, almost normal. But sometimes, usually around the same time each night, 2 or 3 a.m., Pepper will suddenly sit up, stare at the wall, and growl. A deep, low warning she never made before that house. And sometimes when the room is completely still, I hear it too. A faint tapping from the other side of the wall. Not loud, not urgent, just patient, like something searching, like something remembering the shape of me. The sound always stops when I turn on the light, but it always starts again once the room goes dark.